At 11:58 p.m., something hit Donetsk that Russia never thought could happen. Their biggest Shahed drone hub was struck so hard that the whole region went dark for a few seconds. And this was not sabotage or an accident. Ukraine carried out a planned operation. In that one night, Russia lost its main drone supply point, its key command systems, and the confidence it kept bragging about for years. And behind all of it was one name, Madyar, the commander who turned a safe zone into a burning crater in minutes. What really happened that night? Let us show you. The night of November 5th to 6th started with the Donetsk airfield looking exactly the way Russia wanted it to look. It was busy and heavily guarded. Long, clean lines of hangars stood in rows. Big fuel tanks rested behind thick concrete walls. Everything felt steady, but that steady feeling did not last long. The airfield was not a normal sight. Russia had turned it into the main engine of its Shahed drone war. Shelves were piled with drone parts. Assembly rooms were full of half-built frames. Crates of warheads stood in perfect order. The whole place was built to run fast to receive assemble fuel and launch drones. They did it every day with no fear. Even the guards looked relaxed. But something small moved around the base that night. A convoy that paused longer than normal. A radar sweep that blinked for half a second. A soft electronic echo that technicians thought was just night noise. Alone, these signs meant nothing. Together, they showed a trap quietly closing. And at 11:58 p.m., that trap shut tight. A sharp flash burst on the horizon. It came all at once like a camera flashing pure white light across the sky. Then came a second punch, a rolling wave that shook the ground hard enough to rattle metal sheets and blow dust off the warehouse roofs. Calm turned into chaos in seconds. The first blast hit the main storage block. Inside were rows of armed warheads waiting to be mounted. Shade drones may look threatening in the sky, but they are fragile inside the factory. Their whole production line depends on parts that cannot tolerate heat, shock, or pressure. The guidance chips used in many Russian-made Shaheds are commercial components that distort when temperatures climb above 50 to 60 degrees. Once the first explosion tore into the storage halls, those chips cooked instantly. The propellant tanks were even weaker. Many Shahed variants use blended fuel that becomes unstable when a storage room gets too hot. At 60 degrees, the fuel begins to release vapor, and past 70, it can ignite from a spark. The whole explosion ripped through the walls and sent burning pieces skidding across the runway. One wall did not fall outward. It folded inward like paper pulled by fire. A long burst of flames shot through the roof, turning it red before it tore open. People far outside the base saw the sky turn bright orange. They felt the ground move under their feet. Seconds later, a second explosion hit the fuel zone. Rows of metal tanks shook, one falling sideways, another ripping open along its seam. Flames raced upward and black smoke poured across the airfield in thick waves. From above, satellites caught the heat spreading in sharp lines. Every bright zone pointed to another part of the complex falling apart. Assembly halls cracked open. Storage sheds collapsed from the pressure inside. Command units melted into dark outlines. This damage was not random. Ukraine later explained what caused it. A strike built from months of planning and testing. A strike shaped by a toolbox of weapons that had been sharpened again and again. A complete collapse. This attack was not done by one drone or one missile. It was a layered strike built to rip through every part of the base at the same time. Anyone watching the aftermath could see it. The first layer was the heavy hitters, long-range cruise weapons. Ukraine has a class of these that fly low-hide from most radars and smash into hardened targets that normal blasts cannot break. They look simple from the outside, but each carries a warhead strong enough to break bunkers and thick fuel shelters. These missiles fly steady, hugging the land, and they stay locked on even when jammers try to confuse them. Russia built bunkers with thick doors and heavy roofs. They looked strong until something this powerful hit them right where it counted. But the big missiles alone could not destroy the whole hub. They only opened the door. The second layer came right behind them, mid-weight attack drones. These smaller drones are made for clean hits. They dive into fuel lines, storage points, or assembly rooms. Their warheads are lighter, but they are focused. They create direct heat and damage inside places that cannot survive even seconds of fire. The big missiles shake everything loose. The smaller drones finish the job. Witnesses saw this clearly. The first blasts were huge, shaking the air, but the smaller blasts that followed moved across the base like a chain. That chain was the mid-layer drones hitting the weak points the heavy missiles opened. Flames ran along the fuel pipe storage rooms full of propellant and rows of half-built Shaheds. Then came the third layer, the one most people ignore, the decoys. These small drones carry fake heat signatures. They look real on radar and trick defenses into wasting ammo. They are cheap but powerful. In Donetsk, Russian guns fired at these decoys so hard that but some guns overheated. Operators felt sure they were stopping the attack. They were wrong. By the time they understood, the real strike was already inside the base. And while the air filled with noise, the ground filled with something else. Electronic warfare units jammed Russian guidance channels. These jammers broke the defenders' picture. Operators had to guess which signal was real and which was fake. Ukraine's weapons, meanwhile, kept moving. They switched to onboard guidance, visual tracking, and preset coordinates. Nothing stopped them. Ukraine planned this carefully. Each tool made the next tool stronger. Decoys pulled fire. Big missiles slipped in. Big missiles tore open shelters. Smaller drones flew into the gaps. And when Russia tried to fix its radar picture, the jammers drowned the signals. It was layer after layer, time to tear the base apart from the inside. And this is where it gets even more interesting, because everything above explains the how, but what came next showed the full impact. A new kind of war. When the last fireball faded over Donetsk, the operation did not stop. The next phase began right away, and this phase showed how war now moves at machine speed. Ukraine kept surveillance drones above the base from the first blast onward. They watched fires race through warehouses, fuel stations, and storage shelters. They carried infrared sensors so they could read heat through smoke and darkness. From above, the base looked broken. Heat pockets glowed in strange shapes. These showed where munitions were still exploding inside collapsed buildings. Parts of the runway glowed from leaking fuel burning across the ground. Analysts watching could tell which structures were gone. Two huge storage depots glowed bright for nearly an hour. That meant stacks of drones were burning together. These drones were not just watching. They sent every image to Ukrainian command centers. These analysts compared them to old maps. They knew exactly what every building used to hold. Fuel drums, warheads, guidance units, packing crates. That let them measure the damage almost instantly. No need to send people into danger. Machines handled everything. One more weakness became clear after the strike: that Russia's entire drone network depended on a single command chain. When Donetsk fell, operators in other regions suddenly lost access to shared data, timing codes, and launch schedules. Several units had to pause operations because their guidance updates were routed through this base. The strike broke the system that controlled their drones. Then came the ground images from satellites. They showed two command bunkers that had fallen inward. That meant the fire reached wiring rooms, control computers, and communication racks. These controlled Shahed launch schedules. One underground fuel cellar was also cracked wide open. You could see the burned fuel trail from space. These details mattered. They showed the base was not damaged. It was removed. Experts later looked at the thermal logs. Most follow-up blasts matched warheads exploding in storage rooms. Many analysts said hundreds of Shahed parts were destroyed before the Russians even reached them. Donetsk fell because everything inside it depended on everything else. Fuel fed fire, warheads fed shock waves, storage racks fed heat. Control units failed the moment their wires melted. Everything was packed tightly. The strike forced a chain reaction through the whole base. While the base was still burning, Russia scrambled to save what it could. Crews rushed to move equipment to smaller sites. Some went to old airfields, some to empty warehouses, some to temporary workshops were built in a hurry. Moscow did not want to lose everything in one night again, but spreading out the system made new problems. When teams split, work slows down. Parts that used to travel a short distance now had to travel across whole regions. Fuel trucks needed escorts. Warheads needed guards. Repairs took longer because the right workers were no longer in the same place. Western analysts saw the signs in days. Convoys looked confused. Storage patterns changed. Shade launches dropped on several fronts. The machine still worked, but it worked slower. Ukraine used that weakness fast. They went after the core again. Fuel sites, storage yards, wiring rooms, assembly lines. Each hit slowed Russia more. Each week pushed the drone output lower. Ukraine followed one idea: if you want to stop a weapon, you strike the places that build it. More footage from Donetsk proved something important. The success came from information and timing, not heavy firepower. Everything worked together. Sensors read movements. Analysts mapped routines. Algorithms filtered targets. The strike crews delivered the final hit. It was a clean, steady plan that removed a huge part of Russia's drone network in one night. What do you think after such a strong attack? Where do you think Ukraine will strike next? Tell us in the comments. And before you go, make sure to subscribe for more updates on this war. Goodbye for now.